Okay, so let's talk about naming a little bit. Uh, there's a stupid computer science joke that probably not the first time you're going to hear it, and definitely will not be the last. There's two things that are hard in computer science: cache invalidation, naming things, and off by one errors. We're not talking about cache invalidation because that actually is quite hard. But we as developers, computer scientists, engineers, the stuff that we're doing now, we name things all the time, constantly. It's like 75% of your job is just naming variables, naming classes, naming IDs, naming tags, like that kind of stuff. We just name things constantly. So it's tough to name things correctly, and it's always like kind of a struggle, but it's worth taking time, pausing, thinking about a good name for something, and then like if the semantic meaning changes of whatever you named, going back and actually change the name to like reflect whatever it means now. Keeping names useful and up to date is worth the time investment. And yeah, we are definitely not talking about cache invalidation. So, naming things is hard. And if you feel like it's hard, it's because it's hard. So that's accurate. So with classes, you want to name things semantically. You probably hear me, I've said this word like 3 or 4 times, and you're going to hear it a lot, particularly with HTML and CSS. You want to name things after what they do and not what they look like. And that's what I mean when I say name it semantically. Don't name it what it looks like. Name it what it does. Let's dissect that. Let's take some examples. So if I had this blog post right here, right, my cool blog post, and I was trying to name this part of it, right, this title, what would I call it? There is a huge temptation to name that red title, because if you look at that right away, you look at that and it's like, oh, that's red title, right? And it's really obvious up front. And for a while, or like when you write it, it makes sense to call that red title. However, inevitably in the future, if you ever work with designers, they want to change everything all the time. And I'm not pointing fingers, but it's definitely designers' faults. Hopefully designers are not listening to this. I'm kidding. It's everyone's fault, but this always inevitably happens where they come back and it's like, yeah, we're changing the branding, or we're changing something, or it's a Tuesday, so you should change this. Like, I don't know. For whatever dumb reasons, we like changing things all the time. And so later, we come back and we call it, and now it's green. However, there's a problem now that the class name for this is red title, right? So now it's actually not even really describing what it is. That sucks. Because you're going to like go through your CSS and you're just like, oh, red title, and then you go look for it on the page, you're like, there's no red titles on this. Like, where did this come from, right? And so it actually makes your job harder because you're going to read something and it doesn't mean what it reads. And like when you have to kind of do that investigation to like see something, understand it doesn't work, and then understand why it doesn't work, that's like 4 more steps that you have to do before you actually understand how the system works. And like that's bad. What I'm constantly telling you is like, you need to optimize for your future self and your future coworkers. So you want to do something that's going to stick. And the less that you have to rename things, the better. Because what happens if I'm using this like everywhere, right? What happens if I have 1,000 different instances of red title and I have to go back and rename all those? Like, no, I'm not doing that, right? It would be much better if we just called it something that worked in both cases, right? So rather than naming it what it looks like, we should name about what it does, right? So what we should call it is something like post title, blog post title, blog title, right? Something like that, because if it changes from red to green, it still describes what it does, right? It's still a blog post title. So, does that make sense? It's worth taking time, thinking about it. Don't call it what it looks like. Don't call it bold title. Don't call it capitalized title. I guarantee it that whenever you call it something like that, it's going to change to be something else. It just always happens like that. You will definitely get burned by this. You're still going to get burned by it anyway, because we're constantly burning ourselves as developers, but I'm trying to help you with, have less, fire starter moments, I suppose. Yeah, here I have like another shout out to like make sure that you're choosing the right tags as well. Like if something is an article, call it an article. If you have like a section of your website, name it section. Or if it's a nav, you should call it a nav. Those sorts of things. Yep. So don't call it red title. Call it like blog post title or post head or something like that. Describe what it is and not what it looks like. Any questions so far about any of that? Please.
Is it fair to say that naming convention for something like that's going to be a stylistic sort of thing would maybe have hyphens over camel case?
It's a good question. So notice here that I'm saying red title, right? So he's asking, this is called kebab case, in case you're wondering. I did not make it up. That is actually what it's called. It looks like there's like a skewer through it. Yeah. CSS is always done as kebab case. That's by convention. And one of the reasons that that's a convention and it's not camel case is like where the first letter is lowercase and then every word after that is capitalized and it's all shoved together. Let's see if I can kind of just quickly show you what that means. So if I made this like, this is camel case, like that, right? Where it's like all shoved together, that's called camel case, right? So the reason that CSS is kebab case is because HTML in general is not case sensitive. So whether something is uppercase or lowercase, everything is actually in the end gets made lowercase in HTML. So camel case is ultimately meaningless because it loses all that information once it gets put onto into the browser. So in order to maintain like the separation and readability of everything, rather than making this camel case, they do this is kebab case. They do it like this for CSS to make it readable even when it's still put into the browser. Does that make sense? Cool. There's a bunch of different cases. Like I think anyway, I won't show you all of them. Some of them are ridiculous. My favorite SpongeBob case is like when you're alternate from lowercase to uppercase. I was told that it's called SpongeBob case.
I thought that was just a meme thing. Was it?
I think that's why it got named that.
Okay.
It is a meme thing.
Yeah.